A gun has 26 working parts: the length of the barrel, the speed of the bullet, and the caliber of the ammunition determines its lethality. Now you see the human heart has 4 chambers, each filled with separate desires: for safety, for freedom, for power, and for protection. My opposer will say that it's a right for Americans to own firearms, and that is correct. They'll also say that any law that deters the possession of the gun conflicts with our Second Amendment constitutional right. Is that really the extent we're willing to put innocent lives in the pathways of ammunition, resulting in acts that cannot be undone? Because a murdered child has no working parts. 1,297. That's the found average for children who die per year from gun-related injuries, making it the 3rd leading cause of death for children in America. Illnesses and unintentional injuries like car crashes or drownings are just above it. My opponent wants to only focus on the perspective that gun control laws infringe on self-defense. They only like to believe that the Second Amendment in the U.S. Constitution was created to protect individual gun ownership. Also, my opponent will want to persuade you into believing that relatively few deaths are caused by guns. But this is simply not the case. The Second Amendment was constructed during a very different time frame with another agenda in mind. The Second Amendment was adopted into the United States Constitution on December 15th, 1791, along with the other amendments in the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights were introduced into the United States Constitution by James Madison. The Second Amendment was added because in order to maintain a free state, the people must have the right to keep and bear arms. The people wanted the amendment because no government would try to take over with armed citizens. So, as you see, this amendment was made more so for protection from the overbearing government at the time, rather than other people. Let us examine some problems gun control causes that my opponent wants us to believe when they are easily proven false. Again, how my opponent views the Second Amendment is not the purpose it was constructed for. The Second Amendment protects the individual right to possess a firearm aside from service in a militia. This is to protect yourself in cases such as a home invasion, but the Second Amendment right is not an unlimited right to own guns. Like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. Nothing should be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools and government buildings, or laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms. The right of the general public to carry a concealed firearm in public is not and never has been protected by the Second Amendment. My opponent will also tell you that gun control laws do not deter crime. They believe that, in fact, gun ownership deters crime. But if this was the case, then why were there 572,537 total gun deaths between 1999 and 2016? There was also, in addition, 336,579 suicides, 213,175 homicides, and 11,428 unintentional deaths. Guns were in fact the leading cause of death by homicide and by suicide, making it for 67.7% of all homicides and 51.8% of all suicides. which is more than half for both of them. Implementing federal universal background checks could reduce firearm deaths by projected 56.9%. Background checks for ammunition purchases could reduce deaths by a projected 80.7%, and gun identification requirements could reduce deaths by a projected 82.5%. My opponent believes that gun control laws infringe upon the right to self-defense and deny people a sense of safety. According to the National Rifle Association, which they are also known as the NRA, they're pretty much a group that does not support gun control. Guns are used for self-defense 2.5 million times a year. High-capacity magazines should be banned because they too often turn murder into mass murder. A Mother Jones investigation found that high-capacity magazines were used in at least 50% of the 62 mass shootings between 1982 and 2012. These mass shootings include churches, stores, and even worse, schools. When high-capacity magazines were used in mass shootings, the death rate rose 63% and injury rate rose 156%. Some gang members use high-capacity magazines such as 30 rounds or even 90 rounds to compensate for their lack of accuracy and to maximize the chance for harm. According to a February 2019 NPR poll, 65% of Americans believe banning high-capacity magazines would reduce gun violence. My opponent would like to claim that gun control laws will not prevent criminals from obtaining guns or breaking laws, but that's simply not the case. It's been proven that legally owned guns are frequently stolen and used by criminals. Between 2005 and 2010, 1.4 million guns were stolen from U.S. homes during property crimes. These crimes include burglary and car theft. This makes a yearly average of 232,400 firearms stolen. With guns being a product that can be easily carried away and quickly sold at a relatively high fraction of the initial cost, the presence of more guns can actually serve as a stimulus to burglary and theft. My opponent believes that gun control laws such as background checks and microstamping are an invasion of privacy. This is because background checks would require government databases that keep personal individual information on gun owners, which includes their name, maybe addresses, their mental health history, criminal records, and more. It's been proven that a majority of adults, including gun owners, support common sense gun control such as background checks, bans on assault weapons, and bans on high-capacity magazines as well. According to a February 20th, 2018 poll, 97% of American voters and 97% of gun owners support universal background checks. 67% support a nationwide ban on assault weapons, and 83% support mandatory waiting periods for a gun purchase. As much as 40% of all gun sales are undocumented private party gun sales that do not require a background check. They pretty much happen under the table. 53% of all adults surveyed approve of high-capacity magazine bans. 89% of adults with a gun in the home approve of laws to prevent the purchase of guns by the mentally ill. And 82% approve of banning gun sales to people on no-fly list. In addition, something even more interesting is that 77% of Americans support requiring a driver's license to purchase a gun. The solution to this issue is not to completely ban gun ownership in the United States, but to simply put restrictions on gun purchases. Kind of like make little steps as you progress. Buyers should have their mental health checked prior to purchasing a firearm. Magazine restrictions should be put in place, and background checks should be conducted. This isn't in spite of guns, but for protection towards everyone as a whole. Imagine a world where anyone could buy a gun. For example, an 18-year-old still in high school could walk into a gun store and purchase an assault rifle with no questions asked. It's happened before, and we have suffered the consequences numerous times. Innocent people end up dead due to our negligence as a country. The research has been conducted. When will we listen? We need to band together as a country and do what we all know is right, which is to enforce gun restrictions. Put your pride aside and only accept what is better for the country as a whole. I've made my solution clear. It's up to the people to act on it. Thank you.